These 8 workers of parliament had actually been arrested.
Yeah, thank you once again. So I spent the day somewhere far from Kampala doing some trainings, and then so I was not on my phone since I was driving most of the time. When I got on the phone was just buzzing with messages from different people telling me about what was happening. So first, I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing that finally the people are going to have their day in court in systems that are democratic, which is what our aspirations as a country are. You want to ensure that at the end of the day, people who are accused have their day in court to be proved either as innocent or guilty. Was I surprised by what happened? Actually, to some extent, yes, to the point that they were arrested at all. I think we have gotten to a point in this country where grand sums of money are stolen through corruption. Talk of billions and billions and billions, and people don't get arrested. I don't know if you saw, but there's a letter circulating about now of the president sending staff of Ministry of Works on leave, ordering the IGG to investigate them. Yeah, that is also very, very interesting. We have gotten used to this thing where people will be corrupt. There's even evidence, the allegations, serious allegations. And then the best thing, you know, that they've been shuffled from one ministry to another, or maybe they've been put on Katemi for a while and then they get back on. So I think that this is how things should be. This is the Uganda that we want. But again, I'm very, very cognizant of the fact that this is just the beginning. What Agora exposed, and not just Agora, even other organizations joined in, other activists joined in, the part of the Nation Media Group, this radio station, you've all joined in to expose. There's just been so much corruption, so much rot at the Parliament of Uganda. And the Parliament of Uganda, you could even argue, is a sneak peek into the government of Uganda. We've gotten so used to the corruption every day. I keep telling guys that when you're driving on the road and the police stop you, it's the first thing you're thinking, oh, they're going to ask me for money. And 95% of the time, you're actually right. They're going to ask you for money. So it has become a sort of culture. It's so endemic, and that is not how we should be living as a country. Yes.
Just to remind the listener a little bit, without going in so many details, I know you highlighted in your reports the activities that these people who have been arraigned in court today were actually involved in. Can you kindly remind us what exactly was going on, in particular with these people?
So, Parliament of Uganda does have a budget. Like with most government entities, it gets the money most of the times from Bank of Uganda. So what was happening until last year was that people would get money deposited on their private bank accounts. All the 8 individuals you saw, in fact, there were many more. I think in our list, they are close, there are over 15 people. So what happens is that they get money deposited on their bank accounts. And these are very, very astronomical sums of money. People would get 500 million deposited maybe like 4 times in a day. So you're basically talking of about 2 billion deposited on their private individual accounts. You would have people withdrawing the money. People would withdraw money in sums of billions. There's a day, I think it must be Okwi, if my memory serves me right, he withdrew close to, I think withdrew about 4 billion in a single day. I mean, we have limits. So if you're going to withdraw money, first of all, there's so many irregularities here. First, Parliament is not supposed to send money to the individual bank accounts. If my memory serves me well, it must have been that case of Kazinda, after which there were public service standing orders, because one of the Kazinda issues was that money was being sent to private individual accounts of staff, Ministry of OPM, Office of the Prime Minister. So the standing order was that you don't receive in excess of 5 million for government work. So say you're going up country, you can get 5 million, you use it, and then you account for it. These guys were going so many times beyond that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that these are private bank accounts. I have a private bank account. If you send me money today on that private bank account, my account is what? Is in the negatives. So first they will take off the charges. Then if I go to withdraw, I'll withdraw your money. But then where does my money start and where does your money stop? So if I have, say, if I have 10 million on my account, and then you send me 500 million, I'm likely to withdraw or to keep part of the money that is yours. The other thing is that they coined something called corporate social responsibility. Now, corporate social responsibility is language that is used in the corporate world, as you can see it. So MTN, I think MTN has MTN Foundation. Through MTN Foundation, they do a lot of corporate social responsibility. Normally, in their area of interest, you hear that MTN is buying computers, building laboratories, because they're in that IT sector. Now, Parliament is not supposed to engage in corporate social responsibility. One of the things that a lot of government institutions have done is to bastardize that word. I recently saw, I think, Bank of Uganda donating to Mulago, something that shouldn't be happening. That shouldn't be happening. So that was the language that they coined. So what they would do is say, we have to give money to this and such a project. And the project would look good. But then you'll think that what Parliament should do is allocate money, as which is part of its role, appropriation of funds, to those things as Parliament. Let me give you an example. In 2024, when we were doing the Parliament exhibition, Obore, actually started in 2022, I think. Arua, northern much of West Nile, where I come from, was not connected to the national grid. So people would go for every time. So Arua Regional Referral Hospital, for instance, was heavily affected. People were dying, expectant mothers, newborn babies. Power would go for the time. So a group of West Nilers, led by Masi Munduru and others, go to Parliament, and they asked that Arua be connected to the national grid. And the speaker, sounding very, very emotional, said that is going to be a long-term thing. The short term is that I can get for you generators. I can get for you solar panels. Parliament budgeted, I'm told, something to the tune of 200 million to buy solar panels to Arua. Chris Boris made that a talking point. Each time we brought out the issue of misuse of money that was allocated in the accounts, he would bring it up. So I think he made that a comment on NTV. He made that comment on one of our Twitter spaces, a clip of which is now going viral. He said that you people, you don't know how government operates. Of course, they always want to make it seem like we're the ignorant one. So you don't know how the government operates. The truth is that this money goes and helps people. If we were to follow the procedure, Arua would never get solar panels. And this was 2024 when he said, next week I'm going to Arua to buy solar panels. So sometime last year, I think must have been early last year, probably around May, I went to Arua myself. This is almost a year since he made the comments. I went to Arua myself, and I found that Arua Regional Referral Hospital didn't have the solar panels. The hospital that had been built, I think in the 60s or 40s, for a capacity of about 28 expectant mothers, was having as many as 600 expectant mothers. There's also the refugee crisis, South Sudan, Eastern DRC. So people were dying. Of course, by that time, Arua had been connected to the national grid. And that was what was saving the situation from getting worse. But the solar panels were never there. So when I exposed this, eventually they worked backwards. And one day, a journalist called me and said, you know what? They've now brought the solar panels. One of the journalists I worked with to investigate that story. So you see, they created a channel for abuse. It was like this, I don't know how to say it, this good thing that kept giving. 500 million here, 300 million there, 1 billion here, 10 billion there. But I know for a fact that after we exposed that, the money stopped coming from Bank of Uganda. I think the money will come from Bank of Uganda, not to their private accounts, but to the parliamentary circle. And then from the parliamentary circle, these guys will go and withdraw the money. That's what we exposed at the start of this year. That these guys continued getting money. Again, very astronomical sums. You're talking of 1 billion a day. You're talking of this guy getting like 3 billion in a day and withdrawing all that money and taking it to where I don't know. But they claim that.
So they innovated.
They innovated. They were very smart. They changed tact. They moved from getting the money from Bank of Uganda, their private accounts, to getting it from parliamentary circle. You get it? But of course, one of the things that the government of Uganda has done, which is good, is that there's a bit of paperwork. Like money has a repertory in the Ugandan government system. Someone always signs for it somewhere. Someone presses the button somewhere. So that person, before they press a button, they leave their fingerprint there that you can always, if you sniffed hard enough, you could find that this is the person who should be held accountable. All right. So that's what the exhibition was about. And yes, that's where we are. I'm
going to come back to you. Very interesting to understand what happened to the safety measures. And also this money, like you said, has been moving from Bank of Uganda to private accounts. Yes. It's very difficult for an NGO or an individual to get such huge sums of money on their account. Yes. And an entity known as Financial Intelligence Authority does not come up to question the source of this money. So we want to understand what happened to this safety measures. Is it a syndicate? I'll be coming back to you to get that more. But let's go to Christine. Christine, very quickly, you as somebody who is in the anti-corruption movement, confronting these challenges every day, let's also hear your take. How did you receive this news that finally some people are being arrested from Parliament?
Yeah, thank you, Kenneth. Well, we received the news, we welcomed it, and I think it is a step in the right direction, as always. When the president started his term this time, he said it was going to be Chisanja no sleeping. And so we seem to see that actually right from the beginning, the actions that, he started with seem to be moved in that direction. And so while we have always had concerns that seemingly it is the small fish that are always chased and the big fish get away with it, we now see that institutions that are at the highest echelons of accountability, like the Parliament of Uganda, can actually be touched as well and be made to account. For us, this is welcome. That even the inspectorate, for example, the Inspector General of Government, is now independently and able to go after such high-level ranking officials in Parliament. That is quite a step, a huge step indeed in the right direction, because we have previously seen, just to note, I have with me here the annual report for 2024-25 of the Governance and Security Program, and the Inspectorate is one of those institutions whose performance was quite wanting. For example, we see in just 2024-25, while they had targeted to convict corruption cases at 80%, we saw the actual turnout at 27%. That was end of last year. So that performance was really worrying, and it is welcome that we now see this kind of going after the seemingly corrupt. But also too, I think I want to note that having seen this is exciting news, this is good news, but we expect to see the full circle.
What do you mean the full circle?
We expect to see the full circle. By full circle, I mean the arrests have been made. We are going to follow the stories. We expect to see if there's evidence, we see them prosecuted. If the evidence is adequate, we see a conviction, and then finally recovery of these monies. Because Kenneth, for example, I'll just give an example. You talked about Chris Obore and 5 billion,
5.2 billion.
Exactly. When you look at our laws, the Anti-Corruption Act, I think they are not yet so deterrent, and that is one area where we need to strengthen as a country. You look at Section 19 of the Act, says if you are convicted of embezzlement, of the offense of embezzlement, then the maximum sentence you can be handed is 14 years in prison, or 336 currency points. Now, each currency point is 20,000.
Yes.
And so the maximum fine would be 7 million, around 7 million shillings. So when you look at the 14 billion, the 5 billion, 3 billion, we feel that is not deterrent. The law might need to be tightened so that we actually are deterrent, because we believe that the goal or the whatever attracts the corrupt to the act is what they're going to gain from there is the loot. So if we make it a bit risky and take away that hope or that whatever is encouraging someone to engage in corruption, then we feel we are being deterrent.
So you want the money recovered?
Oh yes, the money recovered and punishment handed down. Yes, we need to recover the money. We need to restitute if there are any victims. Then we make sure the money is returned, but also for us to send that heavy and strict signal is to make sure that they do not get away with it. Yes.
Now, Christine, I'm going to ask the same question, Toko. If you look at how the money was actually moving, one would wonder where the safety measures were, like you said, there are some people who, there's paperwork, people who are actually involved in, clearing this money. The money goes to the account of Parliament, and the money moves from the account of Parliament to individuals' account. It goes to banks. Then from the banks, it is withdrawn in cash. There are strict laws and procedures that are in this country about movement of cash money from accounts, etc. You can't simply be, transacting in those volumes. What do you think could have gone wrong? Are the systems down? Could this be a connivance? Could this be a big syndicate out there that is yet to unravel?
Well, I think one, that is a case of oversight, perhaps limited or a lack of oversight, of strong oversight within some of these institutions. Because if you lack the oversight, these officials or the personnel, they will work in syndicates. And if the systems, the internal systems, you have audit systems, you have the, if they are not strong enough, but also transparent enough, you have no one that is watching. This information is not, public, or that creates loopholes and gives way for such kinds of actions. It helps corruption to thrive, and so we have seen quite a number of cases where Parliament transacts its business, privately. We as citizens, we are not privy to whatever is happening there. Reports are not made public. Participation of the public is limited, and so when you have that, then you have more breeding ground, and all these acts will happen. So I think yes, it's a case of lack of oversight by those that were responsible, but also the limited transparency and accountability within the institution itself.
All right. We are moving colossal sums of money on private accounts.
Yeah, so the first thing is that what happened is that people now are smart enough, they don't eat alone. If I'm to use the Ugandan speak, it's like the money, there's a ripple effect where everyone gets some of the money splashed on them. So you could find that there's a whole syndicate that everybody, to use the language of Makerere hooliganism, has had their throat, their throat made wet with some water, so that at the end of the day you find that the language, the money has benefited person X, but bits of it benefited other people. And also I think if you're powerful in Uganda, unfortunately you can get away with so many things. Let me give you an example. On Friday last week I was before a very nice police officer called Fred Muhanguzi from Kawempe, and a very nice lady called Rashida Naruze. They work at Kawempe, but I think it's the Metropolitan North. They were basically asking me questions about the operations of Agora, because I was summoned on allegations that Agora is involved in money laundering and fraud, where there's no complainant. It's just like, well, I don't know what it was about. Now, one thing that stood out for me is that these guys had every record of Agora, including our bank statements. Yeah. You also know that in January this year, the NGO Bureau wrote to us to cease operations. Never mind that we're not an NGO, but after that, the Financial Intelligence Authority issued an order to banks to freeze our bank accounts. The banks never even asked us. They never even informed us. We just woke up one day and we couldn't transact. And they said, unfortunately, NGO Bureau, Financial Intelligence Authority has ordered us to freeze the accounts. More recently, I think in April, my colleague Agatha realized that her personal bank accounts, individual, like you literally this innocent young mother going to pay school fees for your children to go back to school, then you realize that you can't transact. Why? Because the Financial Intelligence Authority, some people there, I was going to use a bad word, some people there have decided that the accounts should be frozen. So at the end of the day, what I'm showing is that these guys are like Big Brother. They watch everything that happens, the institutions, the police. What was the difference with Parliament? I think the difference with Parliament was that there were very, very powerful people involved. As long as the name Anita Mong was mentioned for the last maybe like 5 years or so, it opened so many doors. I know many guys who ended up in Ruzira because they crossed paths with Anita Mong. So that kind of name, that kind of power in Uganda opens so many doors, makes the impossible possible. It literally splits lakes into two, and you can get away with doing so much. So I think because these people had the name Among behind the wind, a name Among in their sails, they could go so far. So they went very far. I'm sure that the people at Bank of Uganda who knew, but turned a blind eye. I'm sure that the people at the IGG who knew turned a blind eye. Why do I know the IGG in particular? Because I even wrote to them personally, signed and sent this request to them for this financial statements. They refused to release them. I wrote them on behalf of Agora, a complaint against their corruption. It was ignored. So I feel like it is the classic Ugandan big person syndrome that we saw with Anita Mong and Parliament. They became too powerful that no one could touch them. They became too powerful that they could get away with everything. So whether it was Financial Intelligence Authority, whether it was Bank of Uganda, whether it was Parliament, and of course there's the clerk to Parliament, who is the accounting officer in Parliament, and should also, of course, have to answer some questions. So because of the situation, the nature of this particular transaction, I'm sure that's why they got away with so much and went that far.
And one would wonder, have we seen the end of this, or you think there could be so many other people who could be picked? But also, as somebody who has been involved in looking at these particular issues, do you think we're likely to see more people being arrested? You will answer that when we return from this particular on corruption in Parliament, following the arrest of about 8 staff from Parliament who were also charged and remanded to Luzira. And that's a story that we're looking at. And in studio, I have Mr. Godwin Toko, lawyer and deputy team lead at Agora Center for Research, Ms. Christine Biringiro, who is a program manager at the Anti-Corruption Coalition Uganda. Toko, staying with you a little bit,
Yes.
from the work that you did at Agora, looking deeper into the mess that was in Parliament, have we seen the end, or you think there are other people who can be picked up? But reactions also from members of the public, people are saying those are small fish. Who do you think they are looking at in terms of the big fish in this pond?
There's always a big fish. So I think first, it depends on the will. If there were to pick people from Parliament whose names have been mentioned in corruption, so many people, I don't think the commissioners, the 4 commissioners, explained well how they got in possession of so much money. That they called what, gratuity, whatever they called it. I don't think that money was explained well, so you could actually pick those commissioners. I don't think Parliament over the last few years had this thing of employing people very, very irregularly. So there was and a lot of the people employed, it smacks of nepotism. You could see that, oh, this one is employed, but the son of a particular judge, and that judge probably will scratch someone's back at some point in the future. So parliamentary jobs were basically being given out, being used as leverage for people to get their political capital. And from our own count, it could be about as many as 500, close to 500 people who were employed irregularly at Parliament. So if you could literally pick 500 people from Parliament, but then that also go to, well, who employed them? Under what circumstances were they employed? So I see the human resource at Parliament is one of the people who has been charged, but that means that again you can still charge many more people. So it's going to entirely depend on the will of the people who have gone after the 8. If they want to go full throttle, and of course, even those who go after them may end up finding that some of their relatives were part of the corrupt gang in Parliament, or you could find that some of them had already been given, their children had been offered jobs at Parliament. But it could go to so many people getting arrested in this particular crackdown. Now, maybe even I should talk about this. The other thing, that how did we get there? Like,
Very quickly.
Well, that's a question afterwards.
Please go ahead.
So I think the nature of Uganda's parliament is that Karundi Serumaga wrote a very interesting article called "Parliament is the Bribe." Now, the nature of Uganda's parliament is such that it has become this very, very good place to go for very, very bad reasons. If you're at parliament, you get a very, very high paying salary. I read yesterday that the MP is about to get their money for the cars. The 300 million should come sometime this month at the start of the financial year. So there are so many perks in parliament. However, also the nature of our parliament is that people go there based on bribing voters. When you bribe to go to parliament, you have to bribe to keep in parliament, you have to bribe to come back in parliament. Now that has a very, very heavy toll on the everyday Ugandans. Yeah? Let me give you an example that I always use. When the late Jacob Olanya died, the former Speaker of Parliament, Parliament under Monk said we need to collect money to pay for the children he was paying school fees for. Interesting, a very good thing, very kind of them. But then the question becomes, most kids in this country go to UPE schools. Most kids in this country go to USE schools. What's wrong with those schools? Why can't the kids Olanya was paying for go to those schools? The reason they can't go there is because of failure in service delivery in UPE schools, USE schools. So if you had to have this discussion, some of the burden that the MPs carry, there's that saying that these mountains you also climb. Why are you carrying them? It's like the MPs are carrying a burden that they shouldn't carry. It's just like it should be like maybe budgetary processes that make the UPE better, maybe oversight as MPs that make UPE, USE better, but they're not playing that role because the circumstances in Uganda right now is that politics has become this thing of bribe. Politics has become this thing of winner takes all, this thing of voters expecting you to do so much. During one of those exposes, by the way, I asked Obore, I told Obore and said, Obore, why is it that you can literally know every civil servant in Uganda, but you can know their salary, by knowing their position. They have this U1, those systems. Like if you crack them, you can know. I'm like, how come we don't even know how much MPs earn? So for me, I think one of the things Parliament should do is put on their website how much every MP earns, so that maybe the voters can also know that MPs are not earning what they believe. Yeah, people really think that MPs are earning so much money. But the last time I worked for an organization that did some research, we were so shocked to find that some MPs earn as little as 500,000 as their take home at the end of the month with all the deductions and all that. I think the average figure for that time was about 5 million, the average figure. But that is like people are earning 30 something million, but the bank takes this, the money lender takes this, the contribution for this, the contribution for that, it brought the money down. So I think that Parliament is in this situation where it's very tight. You can't know how much they earn. People think they earn too much. People expect them to give money for everything, pay school fees, contribute to Mothers Union and all this. So it puts a very heavy burden on them.
All right, Christian, coming to there's a possibility that there could be other people out there. So I know the Inspector of Government is saying the investigations are still going. But you are somebody who follows issues of corruption. What do you think needs to be done?
Yeah, so like we know, Parliament is a big institution and we have quite a number of departments. Like Toko mentioned, we have MPs themselves, we have the technical and administrative staff, we have parliamentary commissions, the committees, procurement and finance functions, and many others. So while we see that the Inspector General of Government has come out and proceeded against this, for me, who I believe some of the senior administrative officials in this one of the country's highest public institutions, I hope and I want to believe that after these investigations are ongoing, and then we'll be able to pick some of these others who maybe could be implicated. But over and above, I believe this is hopeful. Really, what we see is a good step in the right direction, and we encourage the inspectorate to be firm. We see that there's some exercise of independence. The fact that the IGG can actually come and pick people from Parliament. Previously, we thought they were untouchable in quotes because they account to Parliament, and then there are those questions of how do you ask me questions, or how do you arrest me, and yet I I give you your resources. And so we see this as a step in the right direction. While we have seen that some of these, people or MPs and other staff have seemingly got away with it, all is not lost. It's possible they can proceed and still come after these. But I also want to note that Parliament has for long been in the limelight. Of course, for the wrong reasons. The corruption at Parliament, the exhibition that the Tokos have talked about, and quite a number of others. The spending that seems to be, shrouded in secrecy and all that. So I think after this, one of the key lessons that we need to do is to see how we strengthen our systems as Parliament. We need to see how is Parliament being open and transparent. For example, can they publish their budget allocations? How much are they spending? How much does, for example, the procurement contracts? If all this is put up there on maybe their website or in the public, then we are able to do some public scrutiny and be able to actually hold them in check. Otherwise, as things are, with the fact that they even determine their own emoluments and etc., we think that there is quite a lot with this institution that still needs to be unearthed.
All right. Toko, I want to come to you on the way forward before we hear from the listener. If you're given an opportunity looking at how the budget of Parliament is structured, what would you do? What kind of recommendations would you make as a way forward to addressing this particular issue, to cover the gaps?
So first of all, there's a lot of waste in Parliament's budget. The Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, and I think even MPs have a budget for buying clothes. Like really, if you can get to parliament, buy your own clothes. I buy my own clothes at work. There's no budget for me to buy clothes. Yet I earn way less than MPs. So I think there should be, first of all, the alignment should start from there, because a lot of the corruption that we saw with parliament is interestingly budgeted. It's not like
budgeted for.
Yeah, like the money is budgeted for actually.
Exactly. At the time you were raising these issues of Agora, they were telling you this money
is in the budget.
For.
Yes, and they were right on the face of it. They were right, but on the face of it, if you also looked harder, you could say that, yes, you're budgeting the corruption. You get it? Let me give you another example here that I think I've said this publicly before on Twitter, that when Kadaga was Speaker of Parliament, and the budget of Parliament shot to about 3.7 billion shillings for the Speaker. I mean, the budget for the Speaker shot about 3.7 billion shillings.
That is the office of the Speaker.
Yes. And when Olanya became Speaker, Olanya was like, this money is too much. The 3.7 billion is too much. And he had said his intention was to put that money at 2 billion shillings. Ordinarily, I think 2 billion shillings should be enough for the Speaker of Parliament to handle everything. I think so. Annually. Now, he kept his word actually. The first budget, I think under Olanya, the Speaker's budget went down. I think it went down to about 3 billion from about 3.9, 3.7 billion. Now, when it went to 3 billion, then unfortunately Olanya passes on and Among becomes Speaker. That money started shooting. I think it went back to 4 billion, 8 billion, and then at the end of Among's end of tenure, I think it was about 19 billion Ugandan shillings for the office of the Speaker. Now tell me, what is the Speaker doing with 19 billion shillings in a country where the government budgets 18,000 shillings for kids in UPE per year? Like it just doesn't make sense at all. Then two, you have people like Obore. Obore used to be my friend. I don't know if he's still my friend, but let me make reference to him. So you have Obore's budget, like the Director of Communications of Parliament. Their budgets kept growing at an astronomical rate, at a rate that would make a shame of the Ugandan economy. So you have that kind of budgeting that just doesn't make sense at all. So I think there is a wrong thing with the government of Uganda, where the government just has this thing of, we must increase the budget of Parliament. Because I think the budget of Parliament, there was a time when the budget of Parliament was about 500 billion, and the argument was that the budget of Parliament should at least be 1% of the budget, something like that, which would have brought it to,
as an independent institution. That's what they kept on saying.
Yeah, they kept saying that we need to increase that budget, to make it at least 1 trillion shillings.
So that they cannot keep on begging from the executive.
And they don't have to beg from the executive. They don't have to really beg from the executive. I think what I mentioned earlier, the trappings, this thing of you become an MP and then everyone wants you to do for them everything, then you must look for the money. So at the end of the day, that's what I saw. The other thing with the budgeting of Parliament is that it shouldn't be left to just the MPs. There should be, like, ordinarily now, it is the commission, the parliamentary commission, yeah? But we've seen with the last parliament that the commission can be controlled and heavily influenced by one person or the leadership of parliament. So it should be that there should be maybe an independent body that approves, maybe Bank of Uganda, maybe another institution that works with parliament to ensure that their budget is kept in check. So if you cut out the waste, if you ensure that their budget is in line with the realities of the country, you say, well, you're the ones who make laws, so the laws are supposed to grow the economy. Let your budget grow at the rate the economy is growing. You get it? Work for it. If you work hard enough and we grow the economy together, you can get this. That's not what we're seeing. So I think the other thing is that Parliament needs to have a lot more scrutiny. And when I make that point, I must also be very aware of the fact that, first of all, Parliament has a lot of scrutiny compared to, say, the executive arm of government or the judiciary. The nature of Parliament is that they are opposition MPs. It's like everybody's house. So because of that, you're likely to get vouchers of corrupt money being spent irregularly at Parliament, unlike, say, like with the courts of law, unlike, say, like with the executive arm of government.
Somebody will whistle blow.
Yeah, someone will whistle blow. There will always be an opposition guy there somewhere, some in the system, or some NRM guy in the system will whistle blow. So I think what needs to be done is that the government of Uganda needs to realize that it can actually use the citizens to fight corruption. Like I told you, I was summoned to the police for the crime of working for Agora, for the crime of being a subscriber on the members of Agora, which is what has Agora done wrong. Agora has been exposing corruption. Yeah, and the other thing I think is that many times the executive gives mixed signals. Remember when we did the parliamentary exhibition 2024, the president went to a Thanksgiving, was it, of Anita Among in Bukedea, and Anita Among makes this big show of it, kneeling down and all that. No one knows my value, no one knows my value. I think those things embolden people who are putting their hands in the cookie jar. Like when people see that, she actually has the president's ear. They think that maybe the president is involved in the corruption itself. And because they think of that, I think the IGG won't go after them. I think the police won't go after them. They will have what you asked me earlier. They'll have that master key that opens doors where they shouldn't open doors. That makes people ignore. People see that, oh, they've actually taken money irregularly, but they won't blink about it. And yes, the other thing is that I think the IGG needs to do much more to fight corruption. One of the weaknesses of the IGG, one of the weaknesses in their system, is this idea that declaration of wealth forms should be submitted to the IGG and they're kept to the IGG. If you're a government official of Uganda, you should be having much more scrutiny. If I am an MP, there's no reason why people shouldn't know how much I have as an MP. So if I make my declaration of wealth form, publish it.
There are numerous laws on privacy, data protection. And
privacy, you see, so privacy works this way. I mean, if I am now here in the studio, right? Can I come later when people are quoting me and say, oh, but I have my right to privacy? No, because I subject myself to be here. We would have the law to say that if you're an MP, if you're a minister, your declaration of wealth forms will be made public. Do you agree? If you don't agree, let's get those who agree to do that. You get it? Because you can always waive away your rights, including the right to privacy. So I think that if people know that Kenneth has one car right now as an ordinary person, and then Kenneth tomorrow becomes an MP, and then people can see Kenneth is buying a Rolls Royce, Kenneth is building this house, Kenneth, people will be like, hey Kenneth, where are you getting all this money? You get it?
Lifestyle
because to the best of lifestyle audit, that can also come in at the point where now your wealth declaration of wealth form is made public. Because the IGG, Uganda is, people have said Uganda is a dictatorship. I tend to agree. But what Uganda is not, is that it is not a totalitarian state. Like like North Korea, the government of North Korea can watch China, the government of those countries are so powerful, they can watch everybody wherever they are. The government of Uganda can watch Toko, wherever Toko is. It can watch 100 Tokos, maybe 1,000 Tokos, maybe 10,000 Tokos. It cannot watch all the citizens of Uganda. You get it?
Let's bring it in.
Now to finish up that point, that's why the government would need the 45 million Ugandans to join it in the fight against corruption by being as transparent as possible. Here is how much Toko has. Toko earns this much. Does this match? No. Then I would go and whistle and say, by the way, this Toko, whom you're saying earns 10 million, I know he's negotiating a deal to buy land worth 1 billion. Okay. That's where the IGG would come in.
All right. Christine, very quickly, the issue of the institutions. Some people have been saying the IGG is finally working, but there are some people also say they are taking orders from the president. But like Toko says, we need to have institutions that are actually working and have the muscle to bite. Very quickly before we hear from the listener.
Yes, we have previously had similar concerns. But from the trend that we see, it seems the institutions are, trying to come up.
They're beginning to bite.
They are beginning to bite. We see some kind of fresh, air to this. Hopefully they'll be given the resources. We see that they have the will now, and we pray that they can always stay independent because and perform their mandate. Because Kenneth, when we see some of these cases where we are losing so much money, it is not just the impact or the implication is not just on the individuals or on our national budget. We see that it portrays us in a bad light, right? And while we lose all this, for example, we have what we call the country policy institutional assessments that are undertaken by the World Bank. These are annual. But these determine, for example, the performance of a country determines the amount of concessional financing, for example, that you attract from some of these lenders. So while we have quite a number of parameters that they measure, 4 to be exact, we have economic management, structural policies, social inclusion and equity, and then the health of our public sector management institutions. Specifically, if our transparency, accountability, and corruption institutions are not seen as strong, and that is the area that we are actually lagging behind as a country in all these parameters. And so for us to strengthen, to be seen now as we are, that we are taking action, that is a vote of confidence before some of these persons. But also we have made commitments as a country under the NDP4, for example, to reduce our corruption levels or the rate of corruption under the CPI that is usually done by Transparency International annually. Unfortunately, while we take a step forward, we seem to take 2 steps back. We have committed as a country, and indeed we show that we have the commitment to fight corruption. We want to get to 31% at least out of 100, and our baseline was 26, but as of last year we seem to have gone back again to 25. And so when we see such actions by these state agencies, by the accountability institutions, they come out, we also see that public trust in these institutions is actually built. If the institutions, we've previously complained how they indeed go for the small fish, like we mentioned. If we see them coming out and they are biting even the big fish, I think since this year began, we've seen the big fish. The former Speaker of Parliament was touched. We are seeing now high-ranking officials in Parliament are being, touched and arrested. And so for us, we think that's a step in the right direction. We believe citizens are now going to be energized to be able to report some of these cases, hopeful that actually what they report will be acted on. So for us, it's a step in the right direction.